Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne's Tuesday college football basketball blitz, broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. We got in here today, and like it always is, a lot of energy on this lot. They've got Ford, Toyota, brand new cars, trucks, SUVs, over 700 used cars, trucks, and SUVs on the lot. I open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and the service department is open on Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. 25 service bays. They'll get you in and out in a hurry. And follow them on their website, social media. They'll put a lot of information out about cars and trucks and SUVs for sale, new ones, used ones, constantly updating it. Greg Smith, Rusty Howard, Justin Wynn, the general manager, great team over here. They deliver anywhere. So if you get online, you do all the work, it takes you about 20 minutes once you get on the phone with somebody or in the dealership, and they can deliver anywhere. They've recently been to Tampa, Fort Worth, and Denver. They'll ship anywhere. They will ship anywhere. They're great folks to work with. I love them. I love having them as a sponsor because they're great people to work with, and they have a great service department run by Austin Futrell and Johanna. Great crew back there. Hey, do us a favor. Follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. We're here every Monday through Saturday, 2 hours a day, www.sidelines.live. If you miss us, you can always hear it, 680thefan.com, the podcast park. Our friends over there, Chuck Oliver and Dan Matthews, also Southern Sports Today. Great show, all college football. And, of course, Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin. 750 beautiful miles of shoreline down on Lake Martin, one of the cleanest lakes in America, coming up on their 100th anniversary, and beautiful place. We're going to have a show today, start off batting in the leadoff position. Batter up is Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, the Magic City. Second segment, Jimmy Himes checks in from up in Knoxville, longtime sports writer with the Knoxville News Sentinel and does a daily sports radio show. I was listening to it yesterday afternoon on the Sports Animal up in Knoxville, Tennessee. Knows the Vols and the SEC and college sports like very few people do. Top of hour number 2, head over to the Classic City. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, checks in. We're going to be talking about Georgia, the Dogs, number 1 team in the country. The bell has been rung twice against Oregon and against Tennessee, and they curb stomped both of those opponents. I don't know about the rest of their schedule. Not necessarily the toughest, but it's a lot tougher than Michigan and Ohio State. The only reason those two teams are in the top 4 in the college football playoffs is because of the establishment national sports media. And there are a lot of eyeballs and guys that look like Archie Bunker wearing white socks, sitting in an old cloth chair with duct tape on it, that stare at the TV all day because it's too cold to go outside, that watch Big Ten football. But Michigan and Ohio State, seriously, they're just cannon fodder. I don't see how, but it's going to be fun. People say we don't have 4 great teams. Why go to a 12-team playoff? It's going to create a lot of interest. But I'm just saying the Big Ten, I think the Big 12 is better than the Big Ten. But and also in segment number 4, Mark Ham checks in with us, Rocky Top Tennessee Tailgate Report, doing a report on what's going on with Tennessee. We're going to talk a lot of SEC college football, talk basketball. Next 2 hours, buckle up, get ready. We're going on a journey that Ishmael Borg would be proud to go on. And here is Ishmael Borg's twin brother, Doug Dean. Doug, hey, I don't know. There are some people out there that are speculating that Lane Kiffin is going to leave Ole Miss and take a job, believe it or not, of all places, at the University of Auburn.
What are you, a 5-star recruit, calling us University of Auburn?
I love it when people call Auburn the barn, thinking that there's some elitist people, that think, oh, the Barners. And I go, have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately? You look like Cousin Eddie. I mean, hey, by the way, I'd love to have been that guy that came up with all the Cal College wear they sell at the finer stores with the Cal College logo. Hey, man, I love it. I take pride in it. Don't ever talk bad about farmers with your mouth full. But, Doug, let's roll.
It wasn't funny to the business owners, and I bet Jimmy will remember this. Good morning, Jimmy, Rob, Audrey, and all the listeners. This is my favorite week of the year with the Thanksgiving holiday, where it's not about presents and distractions. It's about food and smoked turkey and family and Iron Bowl, dare we say. But a fine establishment in Birmingham, Bromberg's.
Yes.
A fatal marketing mistake. I don't know. It might have been 15 years ago. And the ad agency was, in their mind, poking playful fun at both Alabama and Auburn. And they went over some lines in the minds of at least most Auburn people, talking about that special young woman that spits tobacco out, but you still love her. and there was a massive boycott that definitely hit the Frank Bromberg and that fine family. It's a great store, by the way, and we've bought many things there over the years. But yeah, you got to be careful. I've embraced, Rob, this whole Cal College thing. I think it bothered me back in the 70s when Coach Bryant invoked that. But the more I learned about how food gets on our table and how we put a man on the moon, and I think most intelligent Alabama fans would say Auburn is a fine institution, that research and engineering and so many things is an important part of this, just like the University of Alabama is. So all that aside, this Thanksgiving week, it was an interesting night last night if you follow the twists and turns of social media between Oxford and Lee County. We all got treated to a bunch of either denials, or were they non-denial denials, and a sports writer who perhaps risked some of his journalistic credibility, John Sokoloff, I think I've got the name right, who happens to be in Starkville, which adds to the plot. But he stepped out and basically said that Kiffin was a done deal to Auburn, to which Lane Kiffin replied in the tweet, "News to me, John." So I think the smart money, you're seeing Feldman and Mandel and some of the people who you figure have a few sources. You're seeing the coy days before what I think is a probable announcement of Lane Kiffin to Auburn. But at the same time, things can change. I won't be altogether shocked if that turns out to be a smoke screen and there's some issue like autonomy and control that Sexton and Auburn are stuck on, and Cohen decides to go a different direction. But I do think at this point, I think it's possible this Friday, day before the Iron Bowl, you hear the presser, or maybe Sunday if they want to let Carnell Williams have fewer distractions going into this Iron Bowl.
Yeah, there's so much going on out there. And I always refer to that the two books, A Bodyguard of Lies, about the U.S. and the Allies invasion, June 6, 1944. How did we deceive the Germans? Rommel wasn't there. He was back in Berlin celebrating the anniversary with his wife. Wow. Interesting. And I'll tell you right now, it's so true. Everybody can't be right at the same time. And everybody has been saying Kiffin from day one. As Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, says every time he's on the show, the media guides, check them out. TMG guys, he and 3 other sports writers do great work. Auburn's going to have to, he's going to have to make Auburn's going to have to make Kiffin tell him no. I mean, they may have to get a restraining order, but this is just, everything is Kiffin. Now, we had Yancey Porter on yesterday. Yancey knows a lot about Ole Miss. He doesn't know. What I'd like to do is talk to the guy at the Undertaker's shop there in Oxford and ask him how Pine Box sales are going. I mean,
Rob, and I want to say this with I really mean this sincerity to my I'm just, as the years have gone by, and it's kind of blissful, to be honest. I just don't feel venom for my fellow SEC fans. There may be a little bit of that. Jimmy can relate to it this particular week just because of the nature of the Iron Bowl, but it's a sports hate. It's not real human venom. But I want to say to my Ole Miss brethren, I feel you. I wish we lived in a world right now in which if a school, a fine school with great tradition and history, not the least of which is Archie Manning, but a lot more than that, and what they've been doing in recent years,
Yeah.
I wish that when you rescue a coach's career and he moves from FAU, for God's sake, to Oxford, that translated into gratitude, and that coach, Kiffin in this case, playing the long game and saying, man, what a legacy I could have if we gradually build and the money comes along and we get ourselves up to the level of the top 3 or 4 power players in the SEC. I wish we lived in that world, but at the same time, it's big boy football. And I would say, don't hate the player, hate the game, so to speak.
Well, the game is being played. Jimmy Sexton is the master at it. And look, I got a ton of Ole Miss friends. I live in Memphis. I love Ole Miss, going down there to the games. My friends, they're some of the best friends I've got. And they keep saying, Browne, why are y'all going to take our coach? And I'm like, it's not me. But you're right. Loyalty to a company, though. You work for a company, and they're going to take, 50, 60% of every dollar you make. And they can sell in a heartbeat, and then what are you getting out of that? Yeah. I mean, so how loyal can you be? But in the case of Lane Kiffin, you're right. Ole Miss took a chance on him. I think, Doug, would you agree? There's a misconception that Ole Miss doesn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. I remember, and I want to hear Jimmy's comments, not to take over your show hosting, Rob, but Jimmy will have great perspective on this. I remember the outrage, probably not from a single Bama fan, but from a lot of college football fans, not just here in the South. Some of the pointy-headed academicians when Coach Saban started and then quickly grew that salary to unprecedented heights. But within a few years, when people understood return on investment, there wasn't anybody that was saying Alabama was irresponsible for paying Nick Saban what they were. And of course, the marketplace followed that. And do you remember that outrage? And what are your general feelings about the possibility of Lane to Lee County, Jimmy?
The way things go nowadays, and with Lane Kiffin's history, I'm not making any predictions, but I'm also not ruling out A&M.
There
That could be the real sleeper here, because you don't have a history of meddling with the A&M Board of Trustees like you do at Texas. And I have referred on this show, and actually Franz Beard asked my permission if he could use it on his show, in referring to Auburn as the east of the Mississippi version of Texas when it comes to booster meddling. So again, 3 days is a long time before that anticipated announcement in some quarters is expected, and a lot of things can change. And with Jimmy Sexton being in the middle of all of this, and possibly what could be a 3-way negotiation, there's no way of knowing, because if A&M comes up short against LSU, I mean, you guys have heard just as much speculation that as I have, that the A&M boosters, they don't say much, but they speak with their pocketbook. They could make a move, and do not be surprised.
Jimmy, you doubled, tripled down. If we're at the blackjack table with more intrigue, and I didn't know that was possible. But I'm with you. I'm happy to spend other people's money if they let me, speculatively. And I just think I'm not so sure after this miserable, what's likely to be a 4-7 season for the Aggies with a $95 million guy. I'm not sure they can afford to stay saddled up with Jimbo Fisher another year. If you look at what rival schools are doing, and I also think some of that number one historic signing class is going to be flooding out. Not all of them. Some of them went for good reasons, but I think they will have an exodus So I hadn't thought about Kiffin. I think Kiffin would be. Admit this. Kiffin would probably be a better cultural fit in College Station than at Auburn. I won't deny that.
Well, I think this though. I'm going to announce after the show that I'm turning pro and going to play for the Lakers. Jimmy, A&M boosters don't meddle with that program. I mean, good grief. That's a room. I mean, that's a room full of J.R. Ewings out there.
Yeah, but they don't. But it's one thing to do it behind the scenes, and another thing for the whole world to know what's going on, and that allows you to negotiate behind the scenes, I think, much more effectively. And I think Olin Buchanan described it best, comparing Texas boosters with A&M Board of Trustees members, is that they were going to, let's say, a big fancy restaurant, and they were in a huge stretch limo, and the boosters were in the back seat. The Texas boosters would be telling the driver 6 different ways of what would be the best way to get there, where the A&M boosters would be just calmly talking to each other, and then when they got there, they just got out.
Well, that we got to go to a break. That might be because Texas A&M, over 20,000 students there are in the College of Engineering. So maybe because they're pragmatic, but they get involved. I just can't imagine though having to let $85 million walk out of the athletic complex at A&M to get rid of Jimbo. But there's only so much pain they can take, and maybe they make it back. We're going to talk more about it though right after this quick break on Sidelines.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
They are the law in Auburn since 1959. Haygood, Thompson, Pierce, Cleveland, and Short. You are down there in Auburn, going there for any reason, basketball game, baseball, just there the weekend to hang out and stay at one of the, the Auburn University Hotel or the graduate, the collegiate or whatever. You have any legal matters to attend to, great folks to work with. I've known Phil Thompson, one of the partners, for 40 years. He is a great guy. They're great attorneys because we're all going to need an attorney at some point. So check them out. David Wisdom, the whole crew over there, first-class people. Jimmy and Doug, the thing about A&M, they do have a ton of money. And we know that 2/3 of the oil revenue from the state goes to Austin. A third goes to College Station. Apparently that's used for academics because like Auburn and Alabama, Texas and Texas A&M are self-funded. They don't get any money from the state. They don't ask for it. That way that gives them complete control and autonomy when it comes to making decisions about who they hire. They're not told who to hire by the state. Now, that's just the way it is. And, Doug, I think that's pretty cool. But getting back to this, Lane Kiffin, if he goes to A&M, if he goes to Auburn, in an ideal world, I wish he'd stay at Ole Miss because, Ole Miss is just wrapping up a $2 billion fundraising campaign. Auburn's never done that. Auburn's never had a $2 billion. They had a $500 million, and they just had a $1 billion that they finished 3 or 4 years ago. Ole Miss did $1.5 billion for academics, $500 million for athletics. And if anyone says that it's about money, that's not true. Ole Miss can go toe for toe, blow for blow with Auburn. There's no doubt about it. Now, you talk about all-time tradition. Yeah. To quote Neil McCready, Auburn's head over heels, knees, toes, ears, chins, and eyeballs better than Ole Miss. But right now, Look what Kiffin has coming back next year. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, Doug, and I think Auburn is a great job, but they got to get this hire right. And you can't. All the last few years, Doug, Georgia and Alabama have just been running and doing whatever they want. Auburn hasn't been a threat, and they got to fix that. Now, Lane Kiffin, you talk to Ole Miss people, he likes to go to the beach and do things down there. And my Ole Miss friend said sometimes he's out of contact for days or a week. He's not. I don't know if he necessarily likes going to those alumni dinners and fish fries. And if he's going to Auburn people like a coach that's in the office at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, working and is talking about recruiting and embraces the traditions. It's going to be different if you get Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin's pretty much about Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, well, I think we've said this many times in relation to multiple football and athletics topics, but there's a sense in which winning cures any and all of these issues.
It does.
If you want to see Auburn people and you saw Alabama go through this pre-Nick Saban, and he's such a strong-willed force of nature. Seriously, he came in and was able to pretty quickly recruit and win over the fans that, hey, if you will trust me and you will give me the autonomy to do what we do and build the process, and if you will just do your part influencing talented players at your local high school, considering Alabama, particularly in Mobile, South Alabama, Saban read the riot act about that, then fans adapted and stayed in their lane. And I don't think it's impossible that the Auburn power base could do exactly that if they see the trajectory under a Lane Kiffin headed toward, not losing games you shouldn't lose, and winning some games that we're getting more out of our talent, like Auburn winning a game 52-48 because you've got an offensive mind like Lane Kiffin. And, quickly, because we'll get to time, I'll give you my speculation on what was going on last night, with apologies to my good friends in Starkville. I think there was a reporter that was a happy ally to Mississippi State and was perfectly glad to endear himself to this Mississippi State fan base by creating complete turmoil in Oxford, because it's not hard to read the tea leaves and figure that the odds are, it may not be a done deal, but the odds are that this Friday or sometime this weekend, you're going to hear a presser being scheduled in Auburn announcing Lane Kiffin as the successor to the miserable hire of Brian Harsin. If I'm right about that, then it makes sense that turmoil would be in State's interest going into this Egg Bowl. So then that begs the question, what does that do to Ole Miss playing in this rival game? Does Lane Kiffin even end up coaching the Egg Bowl Thursday night? I would imagine so, but this has gotten messy.
Yeah, it has. And that's the problem. And also, you saw a few weeks ago, I did, sitting out by the fire over at the farm 3 or 4 weeks ago. Remember, somebody put out on Twitter, and you can Photoshop and edit these things, said Nick Saban has told his team he's going to retire at the end of the season. I mean, people were just like going all over it. And I looked at it and I was like, again, there's no way this is true. And it wasn't. Somebody had hacked it, and and you've got to be careful.
Disinformation campaigns.
Yeah. You have to be counterintuitive and intelligence. I mean, again, look at the stock market. Okay, when there's no reason for stocks to be just going up, it doesn't make any sense. That's because it doesn't make any sense. You can't continue to trade at 1,500 times earnings, with a beta of 3.5. Trust me. Same thing goes on with this stuff. But there's something going on about Kiffin.
Rob, we're going to talk about the Iron Bowl for 2 minutes.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I forgot there's a game.
Historically important game. I'll be super brief because there's a reason the mighty Crimson Tide, even with a year that's disappointing, to their fans, which is, is kind of laughable in one sense, because you look at those two losses, both road games, both to ultimate highly ranked teams with kind of miracle endings that it required to beat Alabama. But it is what it is. I think Auburn's shot, a 21-point dog going in there. The only thing that I think if Alabama were to help Auburn quite a bit with mistakes and penalties, not that I'm predicting that, then I like what I'm seeing with Cadillac and this coaching staff committing big time to downhill, in your face running the football, and not asking Robbie Ashford to throw it 30 times, recipe for disaster. And the defense is playing more like we thought they would all year. But even if we play the perfect game with what the talent Auburn has, I think Alabama still goes out of it with a 2-touchdown or better win. But I said pretty much the same thing a year ago, except that was included Jordan-Hare voodoo. Your thoughts, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup. I mean, Nick Saban himself has been very public about his praise of Cadillac Williams and the energy that he's brought to the Auburn program. And you can bet they're going to be bringing that on Saturday. I think, on the other hand, there's been a lot of speculation that this could very well be the last game at Alabama for Bryce Young and Will Anderson. And so if that is the case, you better believe those guys want to go out on a high note and with an impressive performance in the Iron Bowl, because last year Auburn pretty much had their way with Alabama for certainly the first 3 quarters, and Alabama started to show some life. And there, again, with this speculation of 2 premier players like that not playing in a bowl game, I think they have a lot of motivation to go out on a high note. So I think it's going to be a really interesting game, but I do think that the talent differential is too great. I think Auburn absolutely must focus on what they do best, and that's running the football. They know they're not going to beat anybody with their passing game, but once Ashford gets back there, and maybe that primary guy's not open, or maybe the secondary guy, but it gives him, if he has time to survey the field, an opportunity to look for running spaces. And we've seen during the season, as it's progressed, that he's very dangerous when he has open space to operate with. And with a player that can run like that, with that kind of speed and athleticism, in one-on-one situations with the defender's going to come out on the short end most of the time. So I think that's a really wise way for Auburn to try to set their game plan, and then occasionally, look downfield if, Bama's kind of cheating up to try to stop the run, and try to approach the game in that manner.
Well said, Jimmy.
Hey, if I was Auburn, I would run the wishbone. That's their best chance.
Well, Rob, you've been seeing it's not the bone. I miss those days. That was some fun football. But you've seen all 3 of Auburn's talented running backs on the field at the same time, and it causes a lot of eye candy problems and conflict for defenders.
Yeah, I mean, why not go service academy style? Auburn's about like a service academy right now. You look at Navy when they beat Central Florida and Gus last Saturday down in Orlando. What they throw, Jimmy, 5-6 passes. That's what they'll do. They've got you, worried about once they complete one long pass down the field, it causes a lot of stress from that point on. So, Doug, I would, if I was Auburn, that's what I'd run the ball and throw it 6 times, because you might complete 2 of them.
Yeah, and Bryce Young is so elite and talented, and maybe Alabama's receivers are down a little. They would be anywhere when you get Devontae Smith and those guys from the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's hard to just reload at that level every year. But Bryce Young could very well, it wouldn't shock me, between his talent and Gibbs, that they annex a 17-point lead and make it very difficult for Auburn to stay committed to the run.
Well, yeah, I think Auburn definitely has to at least try to get ahead by forcing a couple of turnovers or at least keep the game close throughout. Because if they get behind by a couple of scores early, it's going to be awfully tough for them to make a run at this. But again, what we've seen this year, just the difference in a team's performance in a 7-day span. South Carolina getting absolutely annihilated at the Swamp, and then doing the same thing at Tennessee. I think 63 points was the most points Tennessee's given up in a 60-minute game in modern times, at least of what I've seen of them. Those are the type of point totals that you saw maybe in the first decade of the 20th century. I mean, it was just stunning to watch. And that was not the South Carolina offense we saw in Gainesville. And there's no telling, again, what you can see from week to week. And in fact, this past weekend, none of the top 10 teams look good. I mean, everybody struggled. And maybe that just tells you, what pressure these guys are starting to feel when these 4 playoff spots get closer and closer to being determined.
They do.
Yeah. Rob, at the time, I did want to wish you guys and everybody listening a happy Thanksgiving holiday. We've all got enormous blessings to be thankful for.
Oh, we do. And I think that's the most points Tennessee's given up, I would think, since 1986, when Alabama won with Bobby Humphrey up in Knoxville, 56-28. So that was big. But yeah, these scores, Doug, are crazy. But Doug, we'll talk with you later in the week. Have you back on, talk more about the game. And I like, so right now, if you had a lifetime supply of all the crystals you could eat and Ham's beer, if you were right, would you pick? And if you're not right, you're sentenced to a gulag in Siberia to watch reruns of Maude and Mama's Family for the rest of your natural born life. Which one are you going to go with?
I'm picking one of those two.
No, if Kiffin is Kiffin going to Auburn? If you're right, you get all the hams and crystals. If you're wrong, you watch Maude forever.
Lane Kiffin walking down Donahue and Tiger Walk. You're going to see it next early September. He's coming to Auburn.
All right. Doug, we'll talk to you here later this week. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You bet. All right. Jimmy Himes joins us right now and up in Knoxville. And Jimmy, I was listening to you yesterday afternoon with John Wilkerson on the Sports Animal. I've got that app on my phone, and I recommend everybody out here listening in the free world and the not so free world, because y'all, it's a great show. Love it. Love listening to y'all. And I don't know what it is. My wife being Evolved for Life, and cousin Mark Ham lives up in Knoxville. Just I tell you what, that atmosphere was incredible for the Alabama game. And then I watched the game that we were talking about it against South Carolina the other night, and Tennessee still 9-2, got a chance to finish 10-2. And bottom line, man, there are no easy outs in the SEC, especially on the road at night. And then you had Frank Beamer on the sidelines with Shane there. But I mean, I've never seen everything go right for a team for 60 minutes the other night. Now you got Hendon Hooker's injured. Let's get your take on it, and where does Tennessee go from here?
Well, first off, I think that every year a team will have 2 or 3 games where they just don't play well. And Tennessee didn't play well, in particular on defense. I know a lot of people have been ripping the offense. The offense actually had 31 points a few minutes into the third quarter. They'd have killed for that under Jeremy Pruitt. They also scored on 4 of their first 5 possessions. So the offense wasn't bad. It wasn't what we're used to, but it wasn't bad. The defense was horrific. So I think that was a big issue. And South Carolina did a great job of taking advantage of a porous secondary. And Spencer Rattler was great. He has not had a great year by any means, but by golly, he was terrific that night. I had somebody was telling me, he said, every now and then a pitcher that's 12-12 will throw a no-hitter. And I thought that's a pretty good example, because Rattler was on. He was outstanding. But it was a game where Tennessee just didn't play well. And look, Georgia's had a couple of those. Alabama's had some of them. Georgia's been good enough to win those kind of games. Now, for Tennessee going forward, Hendon Hooker out for the year with that torn ACL. Joe Milton, the quarterback. To be honest with you, I'm not ready to trust Milton. I think he's a better player than he was a year ago. He's handling the offense better. He's got a great arm. He's been more accurate, but he also hasn't played that many snaps when the game's on the line.
Yeah.
So I think this Vanderbilt game is going to be a really difficult game for Tennessee to win for a lot of reasons. And partly
hold those thoughts. We're going to go to a quick commercial break because I want to hear about this right after this. Jimmy Himes with Jimmy Hodge and Rob Browne.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jimmy Himes is with us right now and making a lot of sense. And Jimmy, you talked about it in your first statement there. Everybody has those 2 or 3 tough games. I mean, in Kent State, on the road at Missouri, and on the road last Saturday for Georgia in Lexington, KY, they win 16-6. And I thought Georgia would play a much better game, but it just goes to show you that teams are in the SEC. They've got a lot of pride, and they've all got players. And so Tennessee's here at 9-2. I thought they could win 10 games this year. But once they got where they were number 1, I thought, wow, even after the Georgia loss, they were right there at number 5, and the path was there. You know, you win out, most likely Tennessee's in the playoffs. Now you got to get ready to play Vanderbilt. And you talked about Joe Milton, the big guy out of the muck, Pahokee down in Lake Okeechobee, Florida, played at Michigan, came to Tennessee, was a starter, and Hendon Hooker beat him out. What are you most concerned about with Joe Milton? He's got a cannon for an arm, but what about the short and intermediate passes?
Yeah, I don't think he's been that accurate with the short and intermediate passes. It's almost like whenever he's throwing something short or intermediate, he's throwing 115 miles an hour.
That's right.
He still doesn't have the touch that you would want. The other part of that is decision-making. That's what got him in trouble a year ago, was making the right decision, throwing to the right guy, keeping the ball on the zone read. So I'll be curious to see how the game plan changes with Milton versus Hooker. I'm going to guess that they'll simplify it some. I'm going to guess they're going to call more predetermined runs with Milton and not as many reads. And then on the passing game, I'll be really curious. I mean, there was one play where Tillman wasn't even guarded. He's running up the sideline, and Milton missed him badly. You can't do that. And so those are my concerns, are his accuracy and decision-making. And that needs to be really good against Vanderbilt, or Tennessee's in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, Vanderbilt's won 2 games. Florida's another team that I mean, Anthony Richardson, that Hail Mary at the end, he was trying to hit the scoreboard. You know, he has a lot of talent, but man, you've seen quarterbacks like that. They have the cannon for the arm, but they lack the touch. Jimmy Hodge, come on in here with Jimmy Himes.
Well, Jimmy, I've always been a uniforms guy, and I also know, though, that football fans, players, and all that are superstitious. And the last time Tennessee kind of went all in on the uniform look was the '86 game against Alabama, when they wore the orange jerseys, orange pants, and the orange shoes, and Alabama won 56-28. I said to myself, that's going to be the first and last time we ever see Tennessee wearing orange shoes in a game. And I think I was right. And I think I can say the same for the pumpkin orange helmets Saturday night. Were you as stunned as I was to see those things? And is it safe to say you will never see Tennessee line up for another football game in the SEC wearing those helmets?
Well, first of all, those orange shoes in '86 wound up in Russia. So they got them as far away as they could. Something tells me those orange helmets will wind up in Siberia somewhere. Yeah, I don't think they'll be breaking out those orange helmets again. I know the players like that, and it's for recruiting and all that, but yeah, I think it might be a while before they do that. And if they were talking about the players were all excited about these. Well, they didn't play excited about wearing those orange helmets, so. Yeah, I got a feeling they might put those in the closet and ship them off somewhere and never to be seen again.
Ooh, I don't know whose idea that was. I mean,
players.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, man. I mean, because I think Tennessee's uniforms, Jimmy, both of y'all know how many color, TV ads you've seen for color television over the years, and it would have Auburn in their road whites in Knoxville against Tennessee in their orange home jerseys. But they got really beautiful, cool uniforms. And they're so cool that I remember back when Terry Bowden was at Auburn, they put a shade of orange on the white numerals on the jerseys, and people went Section 8. And Tennessee's got that kind of tradition for sure. I'm a traditionalist. Tennessee has got so much tradition. I don't know why they do it.
Well, they do it because the players want.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's modern times now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, the black jerseys on Halloween night, I'm perfectly fine with that because it's Halloween and black just works perfectly with orange. And on an occasion like that, no issue at all. Now, those smoky grays, they don't do much for me. But again, though, it's one of those things where players have a lot of influence in this day and age, and the coaches are younger for the most part, and they tend to know the importance of being able to connect with those players and what seems like trivial things like that, but it's important to those players, and Jimmy mentioned it. I mean, you can't underestimate that. But the thing that shocked me about the game on Saturday, though, was that South Carolina could not have looked worse 7 days earlier in the swamp. I mean, they couldn't have scored if the Gators left the stadium at halftime. And yet 7 days later, they're lining up in formations I had not seen before. And it looked like Tennessee most of the year with their receiver formations that were confusing opposing secondaries. And it was South Carolina that was running wide open in the secondary for long pass receptions. And they were sending guys in motion. They were running, jet sweeps, the type of stuff you just didn't imagine. And I had no idea their receivers had that type of talent. And let's not kid anybody. Spencer Rattler looked like an NFL quarterback. I mean, he was just sensational.
He was. He had a great game. And he'd only had, I think, 1 200-yard game at South Carolina before the Tennessee game. But he was tremendous. And the receivers made contested catches. And if it wasn't contested, Rattler hit them. Jimmy, what you're saying, I called it a game of opposites. And one of the opposites was Tennessee went into that game known for offensive creativity. But it was South Carolina that showed more creativity on offense than Tennessee did, I thought. Another part of my opposite observation, Hendon Hooker went as a Heisman Trophy candidate. Spencer Rattler played more like a Heisman Trophy winner. I thought there were several things like that. Tennessee was a team that had a lot more to play for, and it looked like South Carolina wanted it more. It was just one of those nights that was hard to explain. Heck, if you take the full possessions, I don't count possessions like when you're kneeling at the end of the half or a game. There were 10 full possessions for South Carolina. They scored 9 touchdowns. out of 10 possessions. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so it makes me even more worried about Tennessee's perspective going into the Vanderbilt game because South Carolina had one of the lowest scoring teams in the SEC, and they put up 63 on you. So it makes me wonder about where the defense's confidence level is going to be against Vanderbilt.
Well, this is an interesting take on it that, Shane Beamer knows the coaches at Georgia. And a lot of the defensive alignments that South Carolina was in, they caused a lot of problems for Tennessee, just like Georgia did. I don't know why, but all you got to do if you're the South Carolina coaches, and that's not that easy, but if you can watch the tape of what caused Tennessee problems, and because they did it, I can't remember a game where a team scores on 9 out of 10 possessions, not a field goals, but touchdowns.
Yeah.
And every time Tennessee, I was going crazy because every time Tennessee would come back, and my good friend Dave Baker grew up in Dyer County, Dyersburg, big Tennessee fan. His daughter, Caroline, is a freshman at South Carolina, and she was in one of those suites at the game. What do I do? I grew up, but she's in South Carolina now. But, I can't remember a more dominant performance. And y'all are right about Spencer Rattler. He was putting the ball where only his guys could catch it. It was like he'd been locked up, and they finally said, just let her rip, son. Do whatever you got to do. And my God, he looked – that's the most dominant quarterback performance I have seen. That and Hendon Hooker against Alabama, those two this year stand alone. Jimmy Himes, would you agree?
Gosh, I've seen are you talking about involving Tennessee games?
I'm talking about college football. I'm very myopic, SEC, but I just, they were so dominant. Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young together. Yeah, you got to put Bryce. That's the greatest quarterback duel I can remember since Archie Manning and Scott Hunter in 1969 at Ole Miss, Alabama. Bama won 33-32. It was that good. Maybe I'm not right, but that's a powerful thing I just saw.
Well, it was, and it was just as we mentioned, Rattler was unexpectedly great because he hadn't been playing that well.
Yeah,
and he was great, but Tennessee's secondary was also pretty bad. And I think that once Rattler got confidence, there was no stopping him. And I'll be really curious to see, how does he play now against Clemson? Does he go back to being the Rattler that we saw against Florida, where he was ineffective?
Yeah. Or
does he continue to play great against a much, much better defense? I'll be curious to see how that one plays out. But along those lines, too, I'm going to be really curious to see what Joe Milton does. What do they ask him to do? Do they dial it back a little bit? Do they run the football more and not ask Milton to throw 30 passes? It's going to be really interesting to see what Tennessee's game plan will be offensively against Vanderbilt.
Well, one thing for sure is I don't know Joe Milton. You've been around him, but I have a lot of respect for that young man. He could have transferred. He already did from Michigan to Tennessee, but he's hung in there. And I got to think every day in practice, he doesn't get as many reps as the number one guy does, but he's been there. I think he's learned a lot. And if he's a little softer on the short and intermediate passes, I think he can be really good. Being in the system, I would think, Jimmy, with Josh Heupel and the Tennessee offensive staff has helped him a lot. But you're right. Maybe lean a little more on the run. But, man, he's got a cannon for an arm, and all you got to do is complete a few long passes, and Vanderbilt's defense plays a different set.
Yeah, and actually in watching him, he can throw a pretty accurate deep ball. He's not always accurate, but he's been more accurate this year than he was a year ago. But I get concerned when he decides to fire fastballs when the receiver's like 8 yards away from him. He's got to show more touch there. But to your point, he's been in this system, so you would think that he will be more effective and look like a more polished quarterback than the one that we saw in the first 2 games of last season.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talent, and I always go back to when you first talked about it. Tennessee, they throw it really well. They got a lot of receivers. Tillman's back, but I know crazy as it sounds, it's like Tennessee played better when he was out because I think they were scared and they weren't leaning on him. Sometimes you can get your star player back, and everybody kind of gets comfortable going, okay, he'll take care of us. I think you got to be careful with that part of it too. But Tennessee under Josh Heupel, I mean, people are ripping them to shreds. I mean, when you get to number one and then you lose a couple of games, you're an easy target. But you know what? That's a good company, good crowd to be in, to say, well, we were number one, because not many teams in the country can say that. Jimmy Hodge, jump back in.
Well, I think I would have to say that the quarterback duel between Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker was maybe the most impressive performance with two quarterbacks in the same game that I think I've ever seen. With what was on the line, Tennessee wanted so badly to break that 15-game streak, and then Alabama obviously wanted to live up to the preseason expectations, in which many experts picked him to win the national championship. And considering what was on the line, that was an amazing duel right there. But I've got to say, going off subject just a little bit, what I saw from Caleb Williams against UCLA, in my mind, put him strongly in that top spot for the Heisman Trophy. And what's so amazing about him, he looks a little different than he did last year at Oklahoma. He looks kind of chubby, doesn't look like he's got that great athletic skill. But I'm telling you what, this guy is as accurate as anybody you'll ever see, and he can hurt you by running the ball if all his progressions are covered. And then, you've got Oregon, I think, and Notre Dame left on the schedule. So if he has any kind of performance close to what he showed us Saturday night, he's going to win this thing going away. But with South Carolina, I wanted to make a point about them. That could be a landmark game for them, because watching that South Carolina offense, first of all, that's going to get the attention of a lot of elite high school quarterbacks in the country, seeing that scheme that they ran on Saturday night. And also, I think it gives South Carolina this ability to go to Clemson to play with house money. There's no pressure on us. Nobody expected us to be in this position a week ago. And now we can go out there and kind of just let it all hang out and put the pressure on Clemson. And I can tell you right now, Clemson hasn't faced anywhere close to the opposition that South Carolina has all year long. And I think South Carolina is going to come in there really confident, and I think they've got a decent chance to win.
Jimmy Himes, interesting bit of trivia here. I just got this text from a friend of mine, Steve Phelan, Vol for Life. He said, I believe our good friend Jeff Heimbach had a pair of those peach orange cleats that Tennessee wore when they lost 56-28 to Alabama in 1986. He said many of the Tennessee players were allowed to change at halftime as the gimmick was disastrous.
I was at the game, and I didn't see anybody changing, but maybe they did. But
I'm not going to argue.
If any guys weren't wearing orange shoes that day, you would have noticed, and I didn't notice any.
Well, Steve is one of Tim McCarver's nephews, and he went to Christian Brothers High School, and I coached his son, Brooks, and I'm not going to doubt him on that, but Jimmy Himes, you may be able to find that. That would be a good question, but I just think Tennessee's uniforms are really cool. And I just, Knoxville, Neyland Stadium, that place is they're back. And I do think that, like Jimmy's talking about, Spencer Rattler, what he did was incredible. Nobody's expected South Carolina to be where they are, but I don't know where he's been all year, but he's out of his box. But Jimmy Himes, when you look at this Vanderbilt game, I guess what you got to think about with Tennessee is how healthy are they? This is the game. There's no sure things in the SEC. We're gonna be right back. We got a few more minutes with you. I got a couple of questions when we come back. We're gonna take a break, but I'm curious what it is that concerns you that Vanderbilt does, because they've won 2 SEC games in a row, and that's almost unheard of. Be right back.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Hagen, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
Okay, Rob Browne, Jimmy Hodge, Jimmy Himes up in Knoxville. And Jimmy Himes, if you could, I know you got to go to rehab, and we appreciate you taking time to be with us. What are you most concerned about with Vanderbilt? They stormed the field, but it looked like a single file, procession the other day. I can't believe they got a $250,000 fine, but they're feeling pretty good about themselves. I mean, seriously, it looked like a walkthrough or something before the game. There weren't many people there for Vandy.
No, there won't be many Vanderbilt people for the Tennessee game either. I think Tennessee will have more fans. So you asked him what concerns me. Well, just look at that Tennessee defense against South Carolina. They were pitiful. Vanderbilt's got a pretty good quarterback in Mike Wright, probably a better runner than he is a passer, but he did throw for 3 touchdown passes against Florida. They got a running back named Ray Davis. He had 100 yards against Florida. He's had multiple 100-yard games this year. They got a receiver named Shepard that's pretty good. So if Vanderbilt, and I know one of them was a special teams touchdown, but they scored 24 on Florida.
Yeah.
And Tennessee's defense, look, I don't know about Slaughter. He had an injury during the game. I don't know about Turnage. He had an injury during the game against South Carolina. Jeremy Banks will be back after a 1-game suspension. He can make a difference, but I am kind of amused that some people think that his absence is the whole reason the Tennessee defense gave up 63.
Yeah.
He's not that good.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. He's not that good. And then offensively, what concerns me about Tennessee is what are you going to get out of Joe Milton? So those are question marks. Vanderbilt's playing with confidence right now. Tennessee's defense is reeling a little bit. So I actually think this is going to be a really tight game for Tennessee.
Yep, I do too. Listen, Jimmy, I know you got to get to work. Let people know how they can follow you on your show and the great journalism, the blogs that you put out. And again, we really appreciate you taking time to join us and hope you have a blessed and happy Thanksgiving and get your knee better. Rob,
happy Thanksgiving to you guys as well. At Jimmy Himes is a Twitter account. You can go to 991thesportsanimal.com. That's where you'll find our blogs. And you can listen to us on iHeartRadio as well.
Hey, look, thank you so much. Again, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rob. Take care,
right.
Jimmy.
All right.
Okay,
Jimmy Hodge, I start laughing. I mean, Steve Phelan is listening, one of our listeners, a good friend of mine, and Vol for life. And he's one of Tim McCarver's nephews, famous baseball player, went to Christian Brothers High School and had a nice pro career until Dion threw water on him in the locker room. I thought they were going to come to blows. And in his day, I would have taken Tim McCarver any day of the week. You cannot beat. Go ahead.
Wasn't he Steve Carlton's personal catcher when he had that 28-win season with the Phillies and the years he was there? And then they joke that once the second person in that battery dies, whether it's 40, 50 years later, that they will be buried 60 feet and 6 inches apart from each other.
Steve Phelan is listening, and if Steve Phelan knows the answer to that question, I mean, I want you to tell me because I do not know it. But golly, here I see bubbles on the phone coming in, Jimmy, because you feel here come we're getting an answer. Paul Schaefer in the band, could we have a little drum music? Paul, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Schaefer. This may require Larry Bud Melman to come out here on this one, or perhaps Brother Theodore, some of the great characters of the Letterman show. But Jimmy, I was laughing so hard, I almost pulled my stomach muscle. Your text the other night about Tennessee's pumpkin orange helmets. They're so they should, We banned beef stew. Warren Whitaker at the Sigma Newhouse one time passed an amendment and a bylaw. It would never be served again. It was so bad. And the water people locally asked us not to as well. But anyway, Steve Phelan has just sent the answer. Yes, he was Carlton's personal catcher, stemming from their time in St. Louis together. But that's a great point. But look, Jordan Hill is on with us right now. 24/7 Sports covers the Georgia Bulldogs over in the Classic City, and just Ian, an up and coming great journalist. He's already there, but he works hard. If you follow the Dogs and you follow college football, follow him on Twitter. I mean, everybody coming up to the podium at the press conferences during the week, after the game, whatever, you're getting up to the minute news on Georgia. Great listeners like Paul Wickenheiser, the Herr Burgermeister is listening right now in Reno, Nevada, Jeff Boone over in Memphis, Robert Durham down in Monroe, Georgia, John Hearn in Bowden, Georgia, Lauren Smith. We love hearing about the Dogs. And, hey, happy Thanksgiving week. Welcome to Sidelines, Jordan. What's going on over there with the Dogs getting ready for some clean old-fashioned hate this week?
You know, it's kind of an interesting week. Not only do you have Thanksgiving, so it's a little bit busier and a little bit, schedule's a little bit off, but it's kind of, one of the more interesting matchups they've had with Georgia Tech in quite some time. Tech coming off of an upset win over a top 25 team in North Carolina, a team that conceivably was still alive for the college football playoff had they won out. It's really interesting week. Obviously, still Georgia's a big favorite, and the fact it's at home is going to help. But definitely a little bit different compared to these last few years where, I still think Georgia's going to win this one, but there's at least a little bit of intrigue between what we're going to see on Saturday.
Well, Georgia Tech certainly played better since they got rid of Jeff Collins, the coach, and got rid of Todd Stansberry, the Canadian athletic director. Hey, there's a football game at Grant Field today, Bobby Dodd Stadium. Oh, really? But Georgia right now, go up there. What was your takeaway from the game in Lexington, KY? Georgia goes up there. That game was the big one in the preseason. A lot of people thought Kentucky would do well. They're 6-5, but they still made Georgia play a full 60. You look at that Missouri game on the road, and you look at the Kentucky game. Georgia was tested in both of those games, and be honest with yourself, they probably weren't all that fired up. You can't get as jacked up to play them as you do your big rivals, but they won the game, and dadgummit, that's all that matters, Jordan, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was ugly. There were missed opportunities. I will say too, and I don't know really how much you could tell watching on TV, how much it was talked about. There was a pretty steady wind. The wind was blowing pretty hard, but obviously both teams had to deal with that. But Georgia's defense really controlled Kentucky until probably the last 8 or 9 minutes of that game. And Kentucky has that big 99-yard drive. And Kirby Smart took some flack for going for it on 4th and 1 and not getting it. I really thought in the moment it was the right call. The Georgia defense had held Kentucky. Nobody was expecting a 99-yard drive, but two, you don't have to worry about that if you finish there on the goal line, and they couldn't get the push they needed. It was an ugly game. Stetson had a really bad interception at one point. He was asked about it afterwards and said, I just straight up didn't see the safety hanging back there. He tried to connect with Lab McConkey deep. But, it was a game where they ran the ball well. Kenny McIntosh, I think that was a career high, something like 143 rushing yards. They built a 16-0 lead, and, Kentucky tries to make it interesting late and got pretty close. I think if they don't have to trot out the kicker down 16-6 and try a long field goal, which, again, the wind was blowing hard, maybe that would have been a tighter game in those final minutes. But you go on the road, you get a win against a really physical Kentucky team, and you're able to turn the page. I don't think that was how exactly Georgia would have drawn it up, but like we always say, a win's a win.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't know of two schools that consistently – Tennessee will do it. Tennessee, Georgia, and Auburn give full scholarships to kickers. It's so important. It's a third of every game. You talk about a legacy that they have. You go back to Kevin Butler out of Redan High School, Stone Mountain, and, Pleslinski now. There's been so many great kickers, and it paid off Saturday.
Yeah, they've used that in the Missouri game, too, where they could not score, And, again, win was a factor, and Podlesny stepped up, and he winds up getting co-SEC Special Teams Player of the Week for the way he was able to play.
Yeah. Jimmy Hodge jumping here with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia like nobody else.
Well, I didn't think Georgia played that badly. They just obviously weren't on their A game, but I was impressed with how Kentucky played coming off that home loss at Vandy. I mean, in my mind, all the ingredients were there for Georgia just to run them out of Kroger Field, and it didn't happen. And as a matter of fact, Levis had a couple of bad interceptions himself when it was 3-0. Kentucky had a chance to take the lead, and he made a horrible decision and even a worse throw. And I was just impressed with how they played with Kentucky. And you mentioned, I think, when it was 16-0, that Kentucky held them twice from the 2-yard line, I believe, and then drove 99 yards and to make it 16-6. Didn't make the 2-point conversion, but then they got another drive going. And I've got to say this, and I know you didn't see any other SEC games, but let me just tell you, take my word for it, that this weekend was not a stellar one for SEC officiating crews. And I think I wanted to see what your description was, this up close and personal, but that was the most impressive tirade I've seen from an SEC coach in years, when the Kentucky receiver got knocked down and as a result couldn't finish his route. Levis throws it over the sideline there. And since the receiver got knocked down, he couldn't get there, and they called intentional grounding. That was like a 2-minute nonstop, just absolute blistering of that crew. And it continued during the TV timeout. And at least they did erase the intentional grounding call. But I got to say, on that missed field goal, I thought the holder did an incredible job getting the hold down, even though the laces were facing the kicker, because the snap scooted all the way to the holder. I don't think it hit anything but the ground. And it was just kind of a weird game in that way. But I got to give Kentucky a lot of credit, and so did Kirby after the game.
For sure. And I knew that officiating crew was going to be off to a hot one. The opening kickoff, they had to review it. They had, I think, a fair catch call, or I can't remember exactly, but it was like, oh my gosh, we just opened this game. And yeah, Mark Stoops had a right to be upset on that intentional grounding, because I remember seeing it going, are they really going to call that intentional grounding? They picked it up, and I don't think there was very many people, at least on the Georgia side, upset, because that was pretty clearly the right call. But yeah, I mean, it was just kind of a strange game, another cold weather game, another situation where, there were a few things that didn't break Georgia's way. And, I know people like on our message board weren't thrilled by the performance, but again, at this point in the year, you're trying to get out of games healthy. You're trying to just continue to pile on wins. And now you got a situation where, you're back home. You should be able to beat this Georgia Tech team, even if they are making, I think, tangible progress under Brent Key, and then try to finish things off well in Mercedes-Benz against, I think, a really talented LSU team.
Jordan, when you think about that, number one, I talked with a lot of Georgia friends, and Jeff Boone in particular, he's always worried. And I said, well, I remember that feeling. Auburn's been ranked 1 or 2, a lot. But man, it's not like there's an armor shield around you. It's more that everybody's coming after you, and you're going, here we are at number 1. You're on this island by yourself. You really don't have anybody that cares about you, because they all want to take you out. That stuff weighs on you after a while. But what I think is so important, Georgia has Kirby Smart. The way he interacts with his players, you see it at the complex day in and day out, what you get to see of practice, whatever like that. But talk about the rest of that staff that Georgia has, how important they are. Dell McGee and Will Muschamp and Todd Monken of keeping this team together. They don't even have any portal guys being a big part of this team. As you said last week, Kirby doesn't hang his hat on that, but it's kind of a source of pride to say, look at these guys we've recruited and developed, how well they're playing. That means a lot, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that there's real buy-in from the players. That's something that Kirby talked about after the Kentucky game. Something that they've been big on all year is they call it a composure card. And, they say they keep it kind of like an index card. And if, something doesn't go their way, you pull out that composure card. And Kirby said, that he had a couple players come up to him and give him a composure card. I don't know what specific call. He said he was upset about something that came up. I think there's accountability. Kirby talked about after the Kentucky game that he had talked to this group and said, what makes you guys different from last year's? And he said the resounding answer was the way we respond to adversity. And go back to that Missouri game. I mean, what might wind up being the player of the year for Georgia is a 62-yard run by Missouri's running back, and Malachi Starks chases him down, tackles him on the 1. If they score a touchdown there, Georgia may lose that game. And, we may not be talking about them as a potential playoff team. They would probably be needing a good bit of help. So, he's really stressed how this team has handled adversity. And they've shown it. There's not been a lot of situations where they've truly had their backs against the wall, but sometimes things haven't broken their way, and they found a way to work around it.
Jordan, I said this last week, Jeff Sanchez, Terry Hogue back in 82, 83, that was the best pair of defensive backs, that I can remember. Scott Warner was a great rover, but you look in the annals of Georgia history, next time you're around Lauren Smith or Tony Barnhart or Mark Schlaball or Claude Felton, any of that, just ask them, is the combination of Malachi Starks and Keely Ringo the best pair of DBs Georgia's had? Well, don't forget about, Bakari Rambo and Boss Bailey and Champ Bailey. But I'm going to say this is the best pair since Sanchez and Hogue. Did you bring that up, or would you?
I need to, but yeah, there's a lot of guys. I mean, I think about Greg Blue. He was back there hard hitting. They've had a great run of them, and I thought we talked about this last week. I think Kamari Laster, the other corner opposite Keeley, has played really well, and he made an impact in that Kentucky game. They threw a couple of screens that, ball wasn't even hardly out of Will Levis's hand, and Kamari Laster was there to get a couple tackles for loss. But yeah, they Keeley and Malachi, they've got a good argument as being some of the best that Georgia's had, even going back to the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, it just that Heisman Trophy campaign in 1983 that they had at Georgia, the greatest one. Jimmy Hodge, you probably remember this, but it was called America's Top 2 Defenders, and it was Terry Hogue leaning up against an F-4 Phantom fighter jet, and then Terry Hogue, of course, in his Georgia uniform, and I think he got up pretty high in the Heisman voting. Terry Hogue was out of Huntsville, Texas. That's where old Sparky, the electric chair, is. Gets a lot of use out there, I might add. But anyway, Jimmy Hodge, jump back in here. More questions after this quick break. Jimmy, hang on. Stopwatch catching us, and then we'll come back a few more minutes with Jordan before he has to go to a press briefing. But Sidelines on a Tuesday, having a lot of fun. More to come after this.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seatbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit houseindustriesinc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hill, we just got a few more minutes. I know you got to get going. What about this matchup with Georgia Tech? Again, health-wise, the state of the Georgia football team, and what are you going to look for to take away from this game? Because you got the next week, quick turnaround, playing LSU for the SEC championship and hold on to that number one spot in the CFP rankings.
Yeah, I probably got about 5 more minutes, guys. Yeah, I think that it's going to be a very interesting situation. I think that this is a Georgia Tech team that, as funny as it may seem, they started off poor, fired Jeff Collins. I mean, they got a chance at a bowl. And, again, I asked Kirby about that yesterday, and he said, look, we'll acknowledge it. We'll mention it to the players, but it's more about what we do. And, I think that the dominance in this rivalry can't be ignored. I think Tech has scored all of 7 points in the last 2 games of this rivalry. So, it's just a situation, I think, as long as Georgia comes in, the biggest thing that really strikes me about Tech, they're something like plus 11 in turnover margin. And they're like 5th in the nation in turnover margin. So the only way Georgia gets itself in trouble is if it turns the ball over. And again, Tech is able to create those plays and get those takeaways. So that will be important. And then on the other side is just sort of staying healthy. They're still waiting on A.D. Mitchell to get back. He did not make the trip to Lexington. It's sort of going to be interesting to see if he's able to come back for Tech or if they, try to hold him out, try to get him back for LSU, or, if Georgia takes care of business, just give him a little bit more time and see if he'll be good to go for the playoff. But, the biggest goals to me in my mind is not turning the ball over on Saturday and then just getting out of this game with a win and as healthy as you can be at this point in the year.
One more before you sign off and let people know how they follow you. Mike White, basketball coach. You got 3 or 4 games under your belt over at the Stedman Mausoleum. What are your differences, impressions of this team versus your previous coach? It didn't work out well, but Georgia's a school that is a sleeping giant. And you get the right guy in state, and I'm wondering, is he going out and connecting in Atlanta and with all these great players in the state of Georgia?
Off to a good start. The biggest thing is they play defense, which even when things were okay with Tom Crean, just wasn't the case. Last night, they played St. Joseph's in the first game of the Sunshine Slam down in Daytona Beach, which is where I should be sitting right now, Rob, if I'd had my call. But, they held St. Joseph's to 15 points in that first half. That's the lowest amount they've allowed in a half since New Year's Eve 2014. So they are off to a really good start. Second half wasn't quite as good, but they hold on and win the game. They're making progress. I think this is still a team in my mind that probably finish around 500, maybe get 4, 5, 6 SEC wins. So it's a slow build, but Mike White has brought in a staff that can really recruit. I think they kind of have the mandate when it comes to recruiting in the state. They understand the talent that's here and done a good job so far. So I think things are looking up. I think no one is expecting this to be a first year. Oh, this is maybe a bubble tournament team, but they're competitive and definitely making strides in his first year now.
Yeah. All right, look, Jordan, I know you got to get to a meeting. Let people know how they can follow you and keep up with all the great work that you do. And we all look forward to your next visit. Always appreciate you taking time to join us. Means a lot, not just to Dog fans, but to fans of college football and basketball, because you know a lot and you know what you're talking about.
For sure. Appreciate you guys. Dogs247.com. Everybody go check it out today because today is free VIP day. So all our content usually behind the paywall. You can go check that out and maybe decide you want to sign up and subscribe with everybody else. And at Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter, at Dogs247. Busy time. We got a basketball game at 4 o'clock. I'll be watching that and probably looking up, talking to Kirby Smart, looking down, looking at the game. But it's always a fun time of year and staying busy and looking forward to Turkey Day on Thursday.
All right. Hey, happy Thanksgiving, man. See you next week.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
All right. Appreciate it. That is great stuff always. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia. And looking forward to hearing his response, what Lauren Smith and Tony Barnhart and Mark Schlabach, some of these longtime dogs, or Claude Felton, the SID at Georgia. Notice I still call him a sports information director. not the media relations director. I'm old school. Get off of my lawn. No, I'm not one of those kind of people, but I like tradition, the history, the heroes. One of our heroes is on with us right now. He's got a birthday coming up Friday. He'll be 39. Cousin Mark, Rocky Top, Tennessee tailgate report. Ann Ham says hello, and so does Skirt Ham and Max Ham, Eric Ham, all hams. All hams have two things. Good-looking family. They're all real smart. But, all right, Mark, we talked to Jimmy Himes right before Jordan Hill of 24/7 on Georgia. And Jimmy Hodge wanted to tell you he absolutely loved those pumpkin orange helmets. God, your son works with the UT Athletic Department. Did they throw them all in the river and give them to some mussel divers over on the Tennessee River? Never again. Never again, Mark. Please tell Jimmy and me, because and Audrey, they made her weep along with the 63-38 score.
Well, when you said I was 39, I thought you meant that's how much we got beat by on Saturday night. But anyway, it was an ass whooping. But the orange helmets will be thrown in the river to never be seen again. They look pretty good in the pictures, but on the field, it was awful. It was bad. So. Yeah,
it was. All right, now let's regroup. Now tell us about. We're going to talk some Tennessee. We're going to go all over the SEC with you, because you are the cerebral man. Next to Frank Duffy, you are perhaps the world's most interesting man.
I'm trying to recover. I will say this is coffee. I won't say what else is in it, but I'm still trying to recover. But, look, we've had a great year. You know, it's very disappointing, obviously, after beating all the people we beat this year. No one expected us to be where we are. No one expected us to win. I think what happened is towards the end of the year, especially on Saturday, everybody expected us to roll in and be the fourth team in the playoffs, and we would just go over there and handle business, you know, in Columbia. And obviously that didn't happen. I mean, you got Spencer Rattler looked like an All-American and a Heisman candidate, but you know, not to knock really anything about the Vols, but our defense has been suspect all year. I mean, if you think about it, we just had to outscore people. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, Bryce Young put up 500 yards. Anthony Richardson put up 500 yards. Rattler put up 500 yards. We just don't have a defense to be a championship team. But, you know, let's just go back 2 years to where we were. I'll take 10-2. If we can beat Andy, a revived Andy team. I'll take 10-2. I was saying 8-4 if we were lucky. But, you know, what a fantastic year. The fun is back. I think, you know, Hendon got hurt. You know, it's a bad way to end things, but I think the future's bright for us. And what a great year, though. I'll say that. Yeah.
Any chance, from what you're hearing, Hendon Hooker, after ACL surgery, comes back to Tennessee?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that, and I don't know if he has any availability. Does he have another year left potentially?
I mean, the virus has made me think guys can stay forever. You know, What do you think, Jimmy Hodge?
Well, anybody that was a freshman during that 2020 season will be able to, you know, go 5 years. I mean, because that was a free year for everybody. The reason being is because the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and their stupidity only were able to play 6-7 games. So they had to make it equal for everybody. So they gave the other power conference teams a gigantic bone. You know, they gave everybody an extra season. So anybody that was a freshman that year can get that extra year, 5 years of actually playing eligibility, where you know, instead of a redshirt year in the old days where you were there 5 years but you only played 4. So that's where it stands, and it's really a good deal for a lot of players, that a surprising number of players that have that option to choose from.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't heard that. I hadn't really thought about it. All that's ever been, you know, in the press here is his, you know, Tennessee career is over. I have not given it, you know, any more thought. But when you go down with an ACL at the end of the year and you got the combines coming up, he's not going to be ready for that, obviously. You can look at his work, but NFL teams, it's a business, and they've got to see him in person, and he's not going to be able to run, he's not going to be able to throw, he's not going to be able to do anything. So really, he's going to miss the entire combine. So does he come back? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. Maybe he does. Maybe he's not happy with the way the year ended, and maybe he does come back. I don't know. I just haven't heard anything, but that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, and then we were talking about with the Jimmy. Joe Milton, he comes in, he's got that cannon for an arm, not real good on the short passes. But as I asked him, and I'm going to ask you, he's been in that system for a long time now, day in and day out, getting a lot of reps, not as many as Hendon Hooker. You got to think that's going to make him a more, I guess, calm quarterback, because he looks like Chris Farley, the motivation speaker, when he's throwing the ball.
Yeah. It was interesting. He started last year and he overthrew some people, but he came in this year and he played decently well in some of the games and threw the ball pretty well. But you just don't know until you get into number one defense against number one offense. I mean, he was doing mop up work. I think this week will be a test to see. Quite frankly, I'll be honest with you. I have this. SEC, fantasy football league I've been in for 12 years with my buddies. And I went ahead and drafted, Milton for next year as a keeper. But it looks like I either got to start him or Anthony Richardson this week. And I'm not sure who, because, Milton may go ahead and light it up, then again, he'll run and lay a duck. We just don't know. We don't know what he's going to do. I think it'll be a good test for him just to see how he's going to do. It'll be somewhat of a home game in Nashville. So we'll see what happens.
Well, it's interesting because, Jimmy and I were talking, Hendon Hooker out of Greensboro, North Carolina, at Virginia Tech, and Justin Fuente couldn't get him on. He played, but he wasn't what he is under Josh Heupel. It's all relative to the coaching. So, but let's kind of switch gears now and bring in. I know Jimmy's got some stuff too. Let's do a little round table here on this holiday Thanksgiving week. Jimmy Hodge, you look at what Tennessee has accomplished this year. Look what Florida looks like they can accomplish one week. The next week, they lose to Vanderbilt. And they got a tough out, this weekend against Florida State. But we thought for a while there the SEC East was as good or better than the SEC West. Give us your report card right now, SEC East versus SEC West. Jimmy Hodge first, and then Mark Ham after that.
Well, I think from top to bottom, I would still go with the West, but it certainly appears that the East is going to get their second SEC title since 2008. So I think there's a lot of upside to the East, mainly because Missouri's been so competitive every week, despite having more gut-wrenching losses than anybody else in the league. And they came back the very next week. That inexplicable loss to Auburn, and yet the next week they play Georgia off their feet for 57 minutes. And they did it time after time after time. So I really am impressed with the job Eli Drinkwitz has done. And 3 weeks ago, they extended his contract to 28. And with the changes that the state of Missouri has made in their NIL laws and then the portal, I think they're a program to watch. And then I think that performance Saturday night, I said it when we were talking to Jimmy, against Tennessee, I think that was a nationwide eye-opener to a lot of elite recruits, especially at the quarterback position. With the night that Rattler had, if they run that style of offense that we did not see 7 days earlier in the swamp, where they got guys in motion, they're lining receivers up in different spots every play, just like Tennessee had been doing all year to create mismatches in opposing secondaries. Tell you what, South Carolina is going to be able to compete for elite quarterbacks, either from the transfer portal or the high school level. And Beamer saw that up close and personal at Oklahoma. So I think South Carolina is a team to watch going forward. And I tell you, I would be very wary if I was Clemson Saturday, even though they're playing at Death Valley. But I think that's a program that's also on the rise. And what can we say about the performance that Vandy has put up the last 2 weeks? And then Kentucky, after that horrible loss to Vandy, the way they played Georgia, they played them toe to toe for the entire duration. So I think this Eastern Division is really showing a lot of signs of having programs that are moving in the right direction.
Mark Ham, agree, disagree?
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, agree or disagree?
No, I agree. I think, when you start looking at this, I think, we saw something from South Carolina we hadn't seen all year. And maybe they studied a lot of our film, from offense, because we haven't seen them come out and do anything like that. And Rattler has been terrible all year. But he had a great game, and obviously, he knows how to throw the ball. So I think a lot of people are going to, probably start looking at Tennessee's offense and start looking at, hey, maybe we have to do this if they can. After the Alabama game and the Georgia game, I went and looked at our star rankings, and a lot of people don't think that's that big of a deal. But all the way across Georgia and Alabama, you got 5 stars and 4 stars, and our averages are probably 3s. And for us to be able to do what we did with 3 stars, I think it has a lot to do with the coaching and the offense that's put in place. So if people start, implementing more and more of that offense, and it makes it a little more exciting, I think you're going to see more and more people be able to do that. I don't know where Florida's going, after that loss to Vandy. Ole Miss, is about to lose their coach to go to your alma mater. So, I guess he's headed over there. Who knows? I read something that said Saban is on the outs, and it's his worst year ever. I'm like, the guy's only lost 2 games by 4 points. But, I think overall, when I look at the East, Georgia's still the elite team that's there with the elite talent. Until people start recruiting, like he's done in the past, it's going to be hard. And I think the NIL does level the playing field to a degree, because I think people will be able to get those 4 and 5 stars if they offer enough money. So you know what? I don't know. It's kind of wide open right now, but I think Georgia's still elite. I think Alabama's still elite. I think everybody else is trying to catch up. Bama's had a tough year, but I don't think, don't think that Saban's not going to come back with something better next year.
Yeah, I agree. We're about to go to a break. Again, you had 5 Alabama games have gone down to the last drive. That is unbelievable. And they're 3-2 in those games. They're sitting there at 9-2 right now. They've got an Auburn team coming in that has run the ball, but Auburn can't pass. They're like a guy, trying to play basketball with no hands. I mean, they just can't catch the ball. They don't have a passing game. It's going to be tough. So, but they'll fight. I can guarantee you that. We'll be right back with more.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne, Mark Ham, Rocky Top Tennessee Tailgate Report, and all things college football. right now. Guys, you look at tonight, we're going to have college football playoff rankings coming out. Start with you, Jimmy. Give me your top 4. May not be that hard, but I'm curious if you have any odd fellas that you're going to put in there to replace, because this past weekend, a lot of really close games for the top 4 teams.
No change. It'll be just the same: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, and then we have to watch LSU. I mean, if they were to win out, they're going to be in with being SEC champions, which includes victories over Georgia and Alabama if that were to happen. So they would be in. And then obviously Michigan, Ohio State loser is going to be out. And I just don't understand some of these ESPN projections that have the loser of that game still in the playoff, because the schedule of both of those teams are a joke. I mean, I think Ohio State's sitting at a cool 66 out of 131 FBS teams, and I think Michigan is worse. And but again, though, the Big Ten, they are the national media's conference, even though they won 2.5 national championships since '68, and the SEC's won 19, but it just doesn't seem to matter. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. I think at the very end of the day, though, is that the coaches tend to take over in that final meeting, be it late Saturday night or early Sunday morning. And I've heard that their criteria, contrary to popular belief, is not comparing scores or opponents that much, but for the 2 teams that are fighting for that number 4 spot, the coaches say to themselves, if those 2 teams played each other, who do they think will win? And that's my understanding on how they make that final decision. That's how Ohio State got in 2014 and how Bama got in 2017.
That's an interesting take. And Mark Ham, golly, I know you and Tom Rainey spend a lot of time out there at the Oddfellows Lodge in Knoxville, drinking road sodas and playing bingo. And you do a lot of thinking out there. Curling, that's right. Curling, yes. The Mullet Festival. They have the Mullet Toss down in Orange Beach in the Floribama. They had the Curling Festival in Knoxville. But Jimmy made a good point. It's the Big Ten is the establishment national sports media's darling. I mean, and it's so obvious. Strength of schedule, Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, before you give me your top 4, Mark Ham, how would they fare with playing Tennessee's schedule, for example? Having to go to Athens, Columbia on a Saturday night, Baton Rouge, not at 11 a.m., but at 7 p.m. when they're all liquored up and the sun has found its home in the western sky at Tiger Stadium. I want to get your answer on that before you give me your top 4.
I think Michigan would be 8-4, and Ohio State would be 9-3, because I read these things about the Southeastern Conference can't play in the cold. Well, most of the football seasons, and still hot weather, those guys would die down here in the heat. They'd sucking wind, and if they played us, in the heat with us running the ball like we do or quickly, look, I'm going to see the top 4 stay the same, but I'm going to throw a little wrinkle in. What if? Not what if, but what happens when Texas A&M beats LSU this weekend?
You think that's going to happen?
LSU's out.
I do.
A three loss. Yeah. A 3-loss SEC champion doesn't get in, I don't think. But I could be wrong.
Does that move Bama back in?
No.
Is Bama the outlier, Jimmy? I mean, Bama's hanging around, man.
No, but who goes to SEC from the West if A&M beats LSU? Isn't Bama back in?
Because the national media loves Clemson
I'm talking
as much as Ohio State.
For the
SEC championship game. Oh, no.
Bama would be in, right? Even though they lost LSU has 3 losses.
Yeah. Because
Bama moves in and plays Georgia. They win.
They would.
And then they get in.
Would.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm pulling for Nick Saban. I'm saying
What? Yeah.
Mark
Ham.
I'm saying A&M wins, LSU loses, Alabama gets the SEC championship game against Georgia.
LSU still has the tiebreaker on Bama because they both have two conference losses. So LSU's in no matter what. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Because Mark Ham, that third loss for LSU,
that's right, was Florida
would
State.
be that Florida State in the first game. That's right. But you're right. Bama's playing. Jimmy's talked about it a lot, and I agree. For that 10-win or more streak of 15 straight years, Florida State did it 87 to 2000, 14 straight years. Bama's about to make it 15. They have to beat Auburn, or if they do that, they're at 10-2, obviously. But if they don't,
all right. So what happens if LSU gets beat, which they will this weekend? They don't go. I guess they'll get beat by Georgia. They're out. Michigan, or Ohio State will be out. Bama's sitting at number 6 right now, right? So do they squeeze into the top 4 at that point?
Clemson.
Yeah, they're going to take Clemson because they'll be the ACC champion.
The national media.
But Clemson gets beat by South Carolina. But Clemson gets beat by South Carolina this weekend.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised either.
I wouldn't either.
So, guys, what you're saying is there's a chance.
I'm pulling for roll Tide, baby.
Yeah, I mean that they can go, and all these people are picking. They act. Look, here's the good thing: if you're Alabama, your standards are so high that your fan base is kind of flat with a 10-2 record. But God bless, man. Look, it's not like they lost 56-7. They lost on a knuckleball field goal at the end in one of the greatest games I've ever seen against Tennessee, October 15th. And they lost on the last play in overtime, 2-point conversion to LSU. I mean, Bama, you can say what you want, but golly, they're going to be there. If they win convincingly Saturday and A&M beats LSU, and there's a lot, Alabama needs to look at it like, guys, we're playing to beat Auburn to get into the playoff. I think this is the most suspense. Would y'all agree for the playoffs we've had in a while, Mark Ham?
Yeah, because again, I know there's a lot of what ifs, but let's be honest, Clemson is no good this year. I mean, they're not. They barely beat anybody, And if you look at LSU's schedule, I mean, they have everybody they beat was, last second. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I think LSU gets beat because A&M has nothing to lose, and I think they're going to bring their A game. And I think South Carolina is going to win. So I think Bama gets in because Michigan or Ohio State's going to lose, and someone's going to be out. So that rolls Bama back into 4, and I want them to run the table.
Jimmy?
I just don't know how A&M's offense is going to score against a Harold Perkins-led defense. I mean, it was just brutal watching A&M against a 1-win UMass team. I mean, they finally pulled away late, but I'm telling you, you talk about ugly. But if A&M did beat LSU, Jimbo will definitely be back. I will say that. And then, but if they lose to LSU, I'm telling you what, there's no telling what could happen in A&M because they can get 10 alumni within 15 minutes that'll each pony up $8.5 million to make a move. I mean, that's how much money and how just humongous their alumni base is that cares about winning, and they won't hesitate to make a move, especially with the oil industry the way it is right now. That's one Derrick, or maybe half of a Derrick, that they can make a move. So that's the thing about college football. You just don't know week to week until they line up and kick it off.
Mark Ham, along those lines, somebody with that kind of money is still, I manage people's money for a living. They don't, Jimmy's, I see where you're going. Oil's around $80 a barrel. Oil needs to be around 85 for the OPEC nations to balance their budgets. We're constantly reminded of that. Notice how oil kind of likes to be around 80 to 85 to keep our good friends over there happy. I mean, I won't be surprised if LSU goes in and wins 49-0. it's going to be too much, I think, for A&M to handle. And I'm with Jimmy. I think they find the money. I don't think it'll take 15 minutes, though. I think it'll take about 5. I think, and they showed, did y'all see the Freddy Krueger type Corvallis, Oregon, miserable conditions of that A&M game? I was watching on SEC Network last night. The 12th man, they had students that were handing off the towel. Did y'all see that? They were shirtless in the rain, and they were running about 50 feet between people because the students had let, I mean, when the fans stop showing up, that's when changes are made. And if LSU just curb stomps, I'm talking, Mark Ham and Jimmy, Gordon Solitaire and LSU has put the A&M Aggies in a vertical suplex, and this is not going well. It's over, Mark Ham. What do you think? Have you ever put anybody in a vertical suplex on the front of a Trans Am with a big old silver eagle before on a Friday night in the McDonald's parking lot?
Only when I was in high school.
That's what I'm saying.
But somebody pulled my mullet and pulled me to the ground. So, I agree. Look, they got a lot of money, but Joe Biden's hurt them down there a little bit with cutting off a lot of the oil.
Yeah.
They're still making a lot of money down there, obviously.
Yeah.
And I got a company in Houston I work with. I mean, there's a lot of money down there, obviously. Yeah. If they wouldn't go on, I mean, some of these guys make $8 million a month. I mean, it would be nothing for them to. It'd be nothing for them to write a check and get rid of him. But I mean, who are you going to get though? I mean,
That's right.
Are you bringing in Kiffin? I heard Kiffin was last night.
I think that could be a very real possibility because I think he'd really fit into that culture, much more than the Auburn culture. But again, though, and Frank Duffy, I totally agree with what he said. If Auburn called Hugh Freeze, he would say yes before he said hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Mark Ham, here's your homework assignment. You and Jimmy Hodge, between now and next week, would somebody tell me what the milkmen, the Texas A&M cheerleaders on the sidelines are doing with those cheers, with all that? I don't know what's going on there.
I can tell you.
What is it? I mean, maybe they know. Is that some sort of a mystic
yell leaders? So my niece, David's daughter, graduated from A&M.
David's daughter graduated from A&M. Okay.
So we went down. David and I went.
Yeah.
Yeah. So years ago, David and I went down before he passed, and we went down for the game where we lost, and Kamara went crazy. Right? We lost.
Yes.
Dobbs throws the interception.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, watching those guys, I just looked at David and he looked at me. I'm like, I don't know what they're doing. And I give Jessica hell every day about it. I'm like, what are those guys doing? I mean, it's like, what are they doing over there? And they're called yell leaders. They've been doing this forever. But I'll tell you, I mean, I'm like, these are the guys that are representing us in the military. I mean, we definitely are woke today. I mean, those guys are not masculine at all. I mean, come on.
Really?
They have so many traditions. Honestly, I can't keep track of them all.
No.
I mean, they literally could have a 100-page book on their traditions, and each one of those little signals they make, the hand signal, whatever, is some kind of code. It means something, and I don't know what it is. And then when it's a big game, they have yell practice at midnight before the game. If it's a big game, they have 40,000 people there at midnight.
I don't know. Hey, Waco's not far from there. It's kind of like a David Koresh cult kind of thing. I mean,
it is. It's these. My dad had looked. I remember one time watching Texas A&M play Auburn. He goes, "Boy, they without a doubt got the ugliest damn cheerleaders I've ever seen." It's just. I'm going, well, Dad, there are no women out there. He goes, that's what I'm saying. The guys look like orderlies at the nervous hospital. And I don't get. I mean, but A&M. I love them being in the SEC. I love the sense of tradition and core values. And you can't get much better than the pregame, the band, the patriotism, and all like that. And you'd think they'd be able to get it together in football. They got a ton of money, but Mark Ham, you've been there. Jimmy's been there. I think I'm going to go. You think A&M beats LSU Saturday, Mark?
I'm calling for an upset because I think
Give me a score.
I think it'll be 31-28 maybe, or 28-25. I think it's going to be low scoring because, looking at LSU's defense, offense, they found it recently. But if you go back and look at their book of work this year,
yeah,
they barely beat the people they've beaten, right? So
except Ole Miss, they stomped them.
Yeah, but come on, Ole Miss got beat over the weekend too. Ole Miss is smoke and mirrors. So I don't know. I'm just going to call for an upset because I think Jimbo wants to keep his job. I think he's going to put it all on the field. All these guys that are hurt are coming back to play. I think he has nothing to lose, and they're just going to put it out there. And I would love to see Brian Kelly, get his ass handed to him, honestly.
Well, Jimmy and I preseason and Frank Duffy predicted great things for Brian Kelly. And he looks a lot like Chris Mortensen from ESPN. But he's doing a hell of a job there. But I'll tell you what, this is a lot of fun. And got Thanksgiving coming up. Got another great show in store for tomorrow. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help somebody with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, as Jay Ever says. Give to give out of the goodness of your heart. And for Thanksgiving, why don't you do something? We're blessed. Bless others. That's what Nick Saban talks about a lot. But if you missed the show, go to 680thefan.com podcast part, www.sidelines.live. We're here 6 days a week. Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin. Lee Perryman, great folks at Radio Alabama. This stuff's fun, man. Jimmy and Mark, your 4 picks. We're going to watch these playoff rankings come out tonight. Again, I can't remember. The way things are going, they're going to need Jim Cantore on the set when they come out with the top 4 teams for the playoff, because if there ain't a Big Ten team in there, Jim Cantore is going to be either in Columbus or Ann Arbor or Chicago at Big Ten headquarters, because there will be a Category 5 hurricane of anger coming. But I think this is the year, y'all are right, more than ever, where we need a 12-team college football playoff. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back tomorrow. We're out of here.